Hey everyone, very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all who are all joining us globally. I am Parth Varu, Events and Program Manager from Microsoft Reactor Bangalore, and yes, I welcome you all to the series GitHub Copilot Hands On with GitHub Stars. And we have our first part today with the topic Autonomous Coding with GitHub Copilot Coding Agent. Before we start our today's event, let's go through our code of conduct. We are all here to learn together, participate together. So please be respectful of other people's views, understanding the differences, be kind and considerate in a way we all engage. Yes, we do encourage you all to participate. Please drop all your questions in the comment section and we will pick it up from there. I would not like to delay further and would like to bring in Swaminathan Vetri, our GitHub Star for today's event. Hey, hi Swami, how you doing?
Hey, hi Parth. Thank you so much for having me here in Microsoft Reactor. I'm doing good today. Thank you. How are you?
I am all well. It's fantastic and very excited to know about the coding agent. So yes, Swami, the
Mhm,
floor is all yours.
mhm. Thank you so much, Parth. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, from whichever time zone you are in. So today we're going to learn about autonomous coding with GitHub Copilot Coding Agent. Right? My name is Swaminathan Vetri. You can call me Swami. Before we get into the session, I would like to give a quick intro about myself, and then we'll get into the topic. Right? Yeah, so my name is Swami, and I work as a lead platform architect at Maersk. I'm working on building an order handling platform for Maersk using cloud native technologies, Azure and GitHub. And I've been recognized as GitHub Star in 2025 for the community activities what I've been doing since the past few years. And I was also part of the Microsoft MVP program from 2016 to 2022. And I've been part of multiple communities in Bangalore. It's been about a decade for me, actually. Coincidentally, this is the 10th year of public speaking for me. I've been part of B.NET, which is a .NET focus group, and then I was also part of Azure user group, and then Get Together is a recent group which I've been leading, and that's my LinkedIn and GitHub handle. And I'm into public speaking and photography, traveling, table tennis, and dance are my other interests. So you can catch me offline on any of these topics, and we can have a chat about it too. All right. So before we get into the Copilot coding agent, I would like to give a quick brief of the recap of the journey of GitHub Copilot. I know there has been a lot of enhancement that's been happening since the time Copilot has launched, right? But what I tried to put here is the high level overview of certain milestones, right? First, it started as a code suggestion tool, right? In the sense, in VS Code, if you go and start writing a code, the Copilot will start completing that code. Or if you start writing a comment for any function that you want to create, it would go ahead and create the code for you. It gives you a suggestion, it gives the code suggestions for you, and then you can either accept the suggestions or you can ask for new suggestions. You can, or you can iterate from there. That's how it started a few years back. And then we got introduced to this chat. In that sense, you got both inline chat and also the Copilot chat extension in VS Code. Right. I'm specifically talking about VS Code, but it's also available across the Copilot is available across the other IDs as well, right? So in the chat, you can go and ask about anything about this particular workspace. Let's see if you have an code base, which is one Java or C# or Node.js or any programming framework for that matter. You can go and ask any questions about the code base. You can ask, there are certain slash commands that are introduced to either fix the bugs or to write test cases or add documentation and so on and so forth, right? And then came the multi-file edits. That typically how an individual developer works, right? Whenever we're trying to implement a new functionality, we don't go and just change only one file. It's going to be across multiple files. Taking a simple example of an MVC application, you need to go and update your model first, and then you'll go and update your controller, and then you'll go and update your, the views, etc. That is something which was made much easier with Copilot multi-file edits. And then we also had this pull request summaries. If you have a big PR, and then I'm sure none of the developers are very good at documentation, including myself, right? So that's where the pull request summaries help. We typically say fix issue number, whatever that issue, but we don't generally elaborate on what are the changes we tried doing in that particular pull request, right? That's where the Copilot's pull request summaries were helpful for us. And then came the code review. So pull request summary is like once it is at the time of creating that pull request, but we also got that AI assistance for the code review perspective itself. Let's say you added a code, and then before even your peer reviews it, you can also use AI as a peer reviewer, and then you can leverage the Copilot's code review to get your code reviewed first, right? And then came the next edit suggestions. That's also a typical natural flow in an individual developer's workflow, right? We make a file, we make a change in one of the methods, and then maybe in the same file, it could be another method we might need to go and add, or it could be in another file we would want to go and make changes corresponding to that particular functionality. So that is what this next edit suggestions help us in doing it, right? And I'm just talking at a very high level on all of these things because these are all there in existence for quite a while, right? And then came the agent mode, which was pretty recent. In February, I think it became generally available. The agent mode is where you can now ask an agent within your VS Code to work on a specific task. So prior to agent mode, what used to happen is we ask for a code suggestion, or we ask for any kind of code reviews and everything, and Copilot gives a suggestion. We make the code change, and then we'll have to do our testing the particular code manually, running the commands, or doing the linting and running the build, etc. needs to be done specifically separately. But that is where the agent mode started simplifying this for us, right? So you give the specific prompt to the agent to start working on a functionality change or on bug fixing or whatever. It will start looking at the code first, try to understand how is the code, and then try to understand what changes to be done. It gets a plan, and then it tries to execute that. And at the course of it, it also gives it waits for our input, the human input, to basically run through any specific commands. So that's what the agent mode enabled us. And with agent mode, we also got access to the MCP, the Model Context Protocol server access as well. So that would help us to provide any additional knowledge to the code base via the MCP tools, right? And now where we are at today is the coding agent, right? This is a pretty recent announcement that happened in Build a couple of weeks back. The GitHub Copilot Coding Agent is still in public preview, and we're going to talk about the coding agent today in a little more detail. So if you want to understand the full changelog of what is happening in the Copilot space, you can look at this link, and then you'll be able to understand the entire changes. Now, what is GitHub Copilot Coding Agent, right? So basically, what if a Copilot can work independently in the background to complete the tasks? So imagine you have a new joiner in your team, or you have any other peer developer in your team. What do we typically do? You kind of go and assign a specific task to them, saying maybe, hey, can you go and maybe refactor this particular code? Or hey, can you go and implement this new functionality? That's how we typically start a particular workflow, right? So what if we can assign that particular task to an agent itself, and then it does the coding activity end to end on behalf of a developer, and then comes back with a pull request? That's exactly what a coding agent would do, right? So what are the use cases it can cater to? It is not an exhaustive list. I just put together a few things which it can be used for now, right? You can ask it to fix bugs, or you can also implement incrementally any new features, or you can improve the test coverage of your code. I'm sure everyone would love this. Not many likes to write the test, of course, due to various reasons. But then if you have some other assistant who can help in writing the test and improvising the coverage, that's going to be a huge boost for all of us, right? And then updating documentation, which is another nightmare for all the developers. And then addressing technical debt, which always gets knocked off in the business parity. All right. So if you imagine you have an site developer who is trying to help you on all of these aspects, where you focus on implementing your core business logic or your complex use cases of your domain which you're trying to solve, right? That is where you can use the Copilot Coding Agent. Now, so how to use a coding agent? So there are two ways you can use the coding agent. First one is you can assign an issue to the Copilot Coding Agent. And then you can also use the GitHub Copilot chat to ask Copilot to create a pull request. So we're going to see both of them in the demo. So the much straightforward and easier way is to open github.com and then go to an issue, and then we can assign that issue to a Copilot agent. As I said, this agent is acting like another developer, so you'll be able to assign the particular entire task or an issue to that agent itself. So now, before we delve into the demo, one more thing. So what is an agent mode, and where should I use agent mode versus where should I use coding agent? This is a common maybe confusion or clarification every one of us need, right? So I try to put together my point of view on where each of these are good for, right? So the agent mode is primarily on the inner loop. What I mean by that is, let's say you are already in your IDE to work on a specific set of activities. It could be implementing a new API endpoint, or it could be implementing a new UI page, or it could be implementing a new unit test, or whatever be it, or it could be implementing your CI/CD pipelines, etc. And you know what you're trying to do, and then you ask agent in the Copilot agent in the VS Code IDE or any other IDE to ask for assistance. Can you help in creating a CI/CD pipeline for a Node.js application? Is a thing which you will ask. And then once it creates it, you will validate it within your IDE. You will run your tests and everything, and then you are going to create your pull request after that, right? That is what we call as an inner loop. That means once you start, from the time you start your dev activities, testing, and then doing the feedback, and everything is happening within the context of your IDE. But when it comes into coding agent, it helps with an outer loop itself. In that sense, you are not really sitting and monitoring and steering that particular instance of that agent action in progress, but instead you are offloading that activity for the agent to do it on its own, on its background, and then it will come back with a pull request, which you will try and give your feedback on. That's why we call it as inner loop versus outer loop here, right? And then it's primarily initiated from the IDE with various choice of context. What I meant is you can choose specific files, or you can choose a specific folder in your application repository, or you can also add additional MCP tools as a context, and then you can initiate your conversation with the agent mode. But here in the case of a coding agent, it always acts as your full repository context, and you can initiate either from IDE or from github.com. And in here, human involvement is needed in every step of iteration, right? In that sense, the agent mode will create the code, and then if at all it needs to do a build, for example, npm run npm build or npm test, it needs to run it. It will ask for you to run the command, right? And then you will have the intervention, and you can keep correcting it during the course of its execution. If you want to stop it, and then if you want to give a different way for the agent to work on it, you can do that, right? But in here, what happens is it's completely autonomous. Like I said, the moment you give an instruction to the or a prompt to the coding agent, it is going to work on it its own. And then once it is completed is when we can start providing our feedback. And here feedback could be via direct file edits or reprompting, because you are in the context of your IDE. If you want, you can keep the changes that are suggested by the agent mode, or the agent mode interaction what we did, or we can ask the agent to recreate or reiterate with the different suggestions, right? But then here in the case of coding agent, you will be typically giving your feedback via the PR review comments, so that the agent can understand that comment and then it can go work on it. I think now you should be able to relate the coding agent is like another developer for us, like the way how we deal with any other developer in our team. We go assign an activity to them, let them work on it on their own background. It could take few minutes, days, weeks, depending on the complexity of the task, and then they'll come back and create a PR. And on that pull request, we'll start giving the feedback, right? It's the same workflow which we will follow with the coding agent as well. And now here in the agent mode, you have the choice of models to the user. You can choose whatever model you want to use. It could be GPT 4.1 or Claude, or whichever one you have the option to choose. But currently, in the case of coding agent, it because it's completely autonomous, it's completely left to the GitHub agent to choose that particular model. I put star because I don't know if it might change in the future, so I've just put as an star mark there. And then this is my personal view, again saying that it's better for tasks where close monitoring and steering is needed in a more close-knit fashion. That's where you can use an agent mode. And in here, their tasks are less complicated and then they're less ambiguous, where you don't need much of an intervention with an coding agent, then you can use a coding agent to work through your tasks, right? Okay, so how does it work? Again, so coding agent is nothing but a GitHub app. Like you might have be aware of multiple other GitHub apps which we have, right? It's an app, and that works on multiple triggers. Whenever an issue is assigned to that app, or whenever a PR comment is created, or whenever it's tagged in the chat window, this app gets activated, right? And what it does, like I said, if it's any other developer, human developer, what we typically do, we'll go and pull down the source code into our local machine, or our code spaces, wherever it is, and then we'll start working on it. First, we'll understand the code, and then we need to basically set up the local machine. If you're doing a local machine, we do a local setup, and then pull down the code, build the code, run the tests and everything, right? And these are the typical things which coding agent also needs to do. But where does it do? That is where it is going to leverage the GitHub Actions, right? In the sense, it's going to spin up a new action with a specific runner. It could be in your Ubuntu Linux runners, right? And then in that particular runner instance is it is going to create a plan first. In the sense, it will first try to understand the task what is given, and then try to create a plan to accomplish that particular task. And then it executes that plan by making the code changes. And then it also performs the validations through linting, builds, testing, and everything, right? And then it comes back with the output, which is a PR. And it also has access to the MCP tools if in case we want to add additional knowledge to the particular task in action by providing any external references like Notion documentation or Google Drive or Figma links or whatever be it, right? If you have an MCP server where you can have your additional contacts which you can provide it, you also be able to make the MCP tools available for the coding agent as well. Okay. All right, with that in place, let's get into the demo part. Okay, all right. So first things first, so how do we enable the coding agent? So you can go to your Copilot settings, and Copilot Coding Agent, as I said, it's available in public preview, and it's available for Copilot Pro Plus and then enterprise subscriptions. So I happen to have one. That's why I'm able to access this. So you should see this coding agent preview available here. And once you go here, you can go and enable it. I mean, because I'm using demo repositories, I've given us all repositories, but typically you would try to give access to selected repositories where you want the agent to be available and accessible. Okay, this is how you'll go and enable a coding agent. And then once it's available, we can go to Copilot chat. And then we can also mention, create a PR for whatever things we want to do. Before that, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to quickly show the source code which we're going to use in the demo today. All right. So what I did is I created a public repository. The link of it, I will share it towards the end of this particular session. So this is a basic, simple Node.js based full stack application. I have two components. One is an order web app, and then there is an order service, which is supposed to be like an order management kind of a service here. All right, there is the README is kind of blank here. So let's quickly run this application to see what is there, and then let's leverage coding agent to start adding new functionalities to this particular feature, this particular code base. All right, so on my left is my order service. So I'm just going to say npm start for this. Okay, this is available here. And then this side, it should be my order web app. Let me do an npm install first, and then let's go ahead and. So this is basically a simple React-based application. I've just used the create React app template and then created this. There's nothing else available here. We're going to leverage coding agent to enhance this particular application now. And what's there on the service side is, okay, I think I have this web app here. Let me do that, it's okay. So I just have a bunch of endpoints which is created. Maybe let me quickly do a curl. Since it's an order kind of an application I've just created certain endpoints to create order. Basic simple CRUD is what is there in it, right? Nothing else is there. Maybe I'll quickly show the app code itself. Okay, so here I've enabled certain endpoints, CRUD endpoints. This is a post endpoint. This is to get full orders, and then this is again to retrieve the order specific ID and then updating a status. Okay, this is what is the basic app which we have. And now let's start engaging the coding agent, right? First thing what I would do is I would like to go and start leveraging the issue route. For that, let me stop this. All right. Okay, we're back here to my GitHub. And this is the one, Reactor Copilot Hands-on Series Demo is a public repo which I've created. All right, I've been trying out a lot, so you might see a lot of pull requests and other things in place. So like I said, I've created a bunch of issues here, right? As you can see, certain things are a little more elaborate, and then certain things are very, very blunt kind of an issues. So let's take an example, right? Here, let's say I've just put one simple example as update the README file with these below notes, right? It is a very simple task. Obviously, we wouldn't want to leverage AI for this, right? We can very well just go ahead and close it. Right. So the point what I'm trying to say is when I meant documentation, it's not about this kind of straightforward documentation. You have a code in place, and then if you want to update specific documentation for the code that is getting generated, if that's not happening, then it would be worthwhile leveraging AI assistant to take care of those activities. Right. So now I've also had I wanted to implement a specific order listing page. Like I showed, the UI is a plain React app, but the API endpoints are available. Now, as you saw, I had to use curl to basically test this, right? So what I'm trying to do now is, what if I want to create a new order listing page, right? So I try to put as much details as possible so that the agent can work on its own without having any doubt or any ambiguity, right? I'm saying create a new UI page to list the orders that are created. And then the order listing page should have a table to display all the orders. And then it will list the columns, whatever the columns I wanted to put, I've added that. And then the item count needs to be computed dynamically based on the number of items. And when the page is loaded, the list of orders need to be fetched from the API. And also I wanted to have a button to refresh the order list. And then I said, add unit test and update the documentation as appropriate. So now, how do we engage it? Like I said, because this is an issue, I can go to this assignees, and as you can see, there is an Copilot AI pair programmer. This would be enabled only if you have enabled Copilot on this particular repository, right? So I'm going to do this. The moment I add that, what it is going to do is it is going to start watching this particular issue. As you can see here, there is an AI icon which came in, and it says Swaminathan Vetri assign Copilot now. And it is going to start creating a pull request, and all the actions that is happening in the background in the agent in the GitHub Actions will all start reflecting in that pull request. So initially it says work in progress, implement order listing page. Let's go ahead and look what it is doing. And it says, it clearly mentions that Copilot AI. It says, thanks for assigning this issue to me, which is pretty kind, right? And we'll look at it. And this is also the description what I mentioned, and this is the issue number, right? And it also talks about certain custom instructions, which I'll cover it in a bit, right? And what it does is this part, the view session here, right? And another important thing to note is it says Copilot started work on behalf of Swaminathan Vetri. That means it's not something it's going to do by itself. I am the kind of a main pilot here, and I'm trying to ask it on behalf of me, right? Ask it to work on behalf of me, sorry. Now, if you click on this view session, is when you can see all the things that it is doing, right? As I said, first it is going to create an GitHub action, and in this it is going to spin up the dev environment, right? And typically what do we do if an issue is assigned to me, for example, what I will do is I will go and look at the repository first, and then I try to understand how is the repository structured, what are the code bases, where is the service code, where is the front end code, and so on and so forth. Right? That's exactly what this does. So it says, okay, I'll help you implement the order listing page, and then start exploring repository structure. It says this is the repository structure, this is the order web app, this is the web app source code, right? And it takes a few minutes basically to get this done, right? And it will evaluate the entire repository, and then it identifies what are activities it needs to perform, list them out as a plan, and then it will start, marking one by one. As this happens, maybe let me quickly see if there are any questions here. Okay, can the agent refer multiple repos to resolve a bug or issue? I know it may be complex, but just asking to understand the capability perspective. Good question. So at the moment, the agent can work on only one repository. If there is a need to work on multiple repositories, that's not possible by the agent. I was also planning to cover this as part of the limitation slide, which I put in, but yeah, at the moment, it's only one repository. Okay, I see other question. Will coding agent use Copilot instructions or other prompt files? Yes, of course, it does that too. So yeah, maybe since it's asked already, I'll go ahead and show that. So there are two ways you can customize it, right? The way how we've been using the Copilot instructions file, that still holds good for coding agent as well. If there is an instruction that's present in a repository, that will be leveraged by coding agent to understand it, and then it follows through that instruction which is present here. That's one thing. And the second thing, which is new for the coding agent, is this Copilot setup steps. Let's say if you have a complex code base which requires certain nuanced setup actions to be done before to set up the entire environment, right? Then you can give all those steps in this Copilot setup steps.yaml file, right? The nomenclature should be like this. The job name should be like a Copilot setup steps.yaml, and then you can present the steps that are needed. In this example, it's a simple NPM, Node.js based application. So I've just given only the options, the actions steps to check out the code, and then to set up Node.js, install dependencies, etc. But if you have very specific things that you want to set up in your application, you could do that. Right? So that's one level of customization, right? So that means what it will do, it will save some time in setting up the environment, because we have already given instructions on what kind of runner to be used, what kind of dependencies we need to install, and everything. Okay, is there anything else? Okay. All right, let's go back and see what is our agent doing. See, this is exactly how we can leverage the agent, right? So now I don't have to actually sit and monitor it. Ideally, I would offload this job, and then I would work on something else, maybe like how I'm explaining now in this demo. I can do my presentation side by side, and then by the time it completes it, we can go back and then review that PR, right? Maybe let's quickly do that itself, right? Let me jump back to the presentation. Let's give 5 more minutes. Yeah, this is what I just covered, customizing the coding agent. We can add Copilot instructions file, and then that would be available available to the Copilot coding agent as well. And then the Copilot steps.yaml file is where we define the steps. And next, now you can think of that could be certain risk and mitigation, because we are giving the entire repository access to an AI agent, right? What are the risks it can have? These are some of the risks which are already documented in the GitHub documentation, which is what I pulled up here, right? It can push changes to the repository. which is good and bad as well, right? Can it push any other malicious code to it or not? And where can it push the code, right? Those are some of the questions which we will have. So how it is mitigated is you can only, let's say if I'm in the repository which I showed, I have write access to that particular repository. Only I can assign the issues to coding agent. If you are in a public repository, if you have only read access, you'll not be able to go and assign any random issue to any coding agent. That means it's in a way, it's ensuring that, let's say if I'm now responsible because I've assigned this issue to a coding agent, it's on me to ensure whatever the code the coding agent is creating, I need to validate it, run through it, review it clearly, carefully, and then I need to merge it with your main branch, right? And then there is also permissions restrictions on the access token. What I mean by that is, when you create, let me go back quickly to this. So as the session is going on, what it did is it created a PR here, right? And what typically it does is it creates a new branch called Copilot slash, which starts with Copilot slash, right? And then fix dash 9 is the issue number. So it just fix dash 9, right? By default, it can commit only to this particular branch. Copilot slash branch is where the coding agent can commit any changes. It cannot go and write into the main branch directly, okay? Which is what we mean by limit on the permissions for the access token. And also there is also a limit on the Copilot credentials. It cannot run all the commands. It can run certain git push and pull related commands only, which are helpful in enabling the coding activities. Right. And then there's also restriction to run the GitHub workflows. I'm not sure if you have noticed, going back here, when I went to this, connected to this pull request, as you can see, there's one workflow awaiting approval, which is our approve workflows to run. Right. The reason being, I've enabled an CI pipeline in this particular repository. Whenever a PR is created or updated, it is going to run a workflow, which is what I put here in my CI YAML file. As you can see, right, it's on pull request on my branches main. When they're open, synchronize, or reopen, I'm going to run this particular job. Now, because coding agent has already created a work in progress PR, and then it is doing certain commits into this particular PR, it is asking for my approval to run the workflows. So by default, it doesn't run the workflow. Now I'm going to say approve workflows to run, so that it can basically run the checks whenever the code changes are happening. See, as you can see, this is now doing the CI build for it. So that is what is about restrictions to run the GitHub workflows. And then the PR review restrictions, because I am the one who assigned the issue to the coding agent, it will not be appropriate if I go and just simply complete the PR review, approve the PR, and then merge it, right? So if you have any pull request review restrictions are in place, in the sense if you need minimal two approvers to approve the PR, then your approval will not count for that. You need to have your peers' human approvals to get to this pull request. Okay. And we can also think that Copilot has access to sensitive information, right? So what is by default done is there is no firewall access to the coding agent. And if we need to have any external access from this GitHub action runner where it is running, then we need to have certain firewall policies to be set up, and then only those specific endpoints will be accessible from the from that runner by the coding agent. So that means though it has access to the information, that information doesn't get leaked anywhere outside of that particular runner. And also another good thing with the runner is that once this execution of the GitHub Actions is completed, this runner is completely tear down, and then a new runner will come in for the next time, right? So the information, whatever is pulled in the previous session is gone already. And that would also be a possibility of prompt injection, right? So what is also taken care is the hidden characters are filtered by the time the prompts goes into the, let's say if you have an instruction file, if there are any hidden characters, those are all already filtered so that the hidden characters are not really sent as part of the prompt and the context. Let me quickly go back and see if our agent has completed its work. Okay, it's still going on. And other thing to note here is, see, as you can see, it created a nice plan about what it is trying to do. Right, it says core support to order service for client server communication, create order list React component with table display, implement API to fetch orders, and then add table columns, calculate item count dynamically, add refresh button, integrate order list component, add unit test, update documentation, test end-to-end functionality. So this checkboxes would get ticked as and when things have progress in the session here below. All right, now let's go back to the session. All right, so we did this, it's checking the API application. And then this is what it ran the test, basically to ensure tests are passing already. And then now it's checking the server side, server code. I have a WebSocket part, which will come to it next if time permits in the demo. Okay, now it says, now I understand the current repository structure. This is a server with in-memory order storage, and it has these endpoints and all the tests are passing. And this is a client app, which is in basic React app created using create React app. So I mean, typically how we do an inference, as it says, yes, the thought here, right? This is a thought. It follows a chain of thought, a pattern to work on this particular task which is assigned to it. And then it says, my plan is create an orderless component in React that fetches orders from API endpoint. And then it displays whatever it is trying to do. It does all these things. And it also says key considerations. Need to handle cars, and then item code needs to be calculated, handle loading states and errors in the UI, and so on and so forth. And then this is a progress update, what it does. As you can see, initially, all of these are the ones as checkboxes just created in that particular PR. And as and when it progresses, it starts ticking one by one. So yeah, now order service. Okay, what's happening? Now this is a new order list page that has come up. I think the session is completed. As you can see, it took about 9 minutes, 55 seconds. And this is, if you want to monitor the session live, you can follow through this during the session. Otherwise, we can, let it do the job. And then we can go back to the pull request and then start understanding what are the code changes the coding agent has done, right? Yeah, it says Copilot has requested a review on this pull request. Yeah, so as you can see, once this is completed in the pull request, you can see all the descriptions, which is pretty neat and exhaustive, so that we can easily understand what has actually happened in the past 10 minutes, right? This implements a comprehensive order listing page, and then this is the listing table, and this is the visual design. It says depending whichever background processing, ship, delivered, and canceled, and then the functionality wise, what are the functionalities it implemented, and what kind of testing it has added, and also the different technical implementation and the documentation updates. And it says this is the code quality. And this actually gives a nice comprehensive view of all the action that happened in the background. Right? And if we go through this clearly, then we can also understand what are the related changes that the Copilot agent has done in the files, right? Otherwise, typically what happens if we don't have this full clarity, we will go and then we go and start looking at the file, and then we have to go and ask the developers, hey, you know what, why did you do this? Can you explain what is the rationale behind doing this particular step or something like that, right? So that those are the things which are automatically taken care of for the documentation that gets updated in the pull request, right? And this is the documentation which I had, the order management MD part, right? Now it also has whatever new implementation it added. It has added the documentation for this here. Right. So what we will do now is, before going into the full review, let's try to run the application in the local, which is what we typically again do, right? Because it's me who is responsible for this particular issue. I need to ensure the app works properly, and then the code is also written in the right way. So what I will do now is I'll go and pull this particular branch into my local. So I will say git, I'm in the main branch now. Okay, I can see this Copilot. Check out Copilot fix 9 is what we're going to do. Okay, it has created it. So I'm a bit curious to understand what it created. So I'm just going to do an npm start directly on the server. Okay. Okay. Too curious. I need to go into the order service. Okay. And then maybe let me do an npm install to see if it has added any new packages. Okay. And then I'm going to say npm start. Okay, the server is listening. Now let's go to it's the web app. And then I'm going to say again npm install. And then let's say npm start. Okay, so it has created, we have a new order management system page now. There is an order list and it says no orders found. That's because we don't have any order creator, right? So let me put, sorry, where did that go? Okay, so I'm going to put this side by side. And in here, let's go ahead and do a curl command to create a new order and then see if it's going to come up there. This is my documentation, api.md. So this entire repository actually I created using the code Copilot. First thing I used agent mode initially to do certain activities in the VS Code to do the initial commit, and then I leveraged the Copilot coding agent to create the base, the thread endpoints and all. Okay, let me go ahead and run this here. I've created one order. Maybe I'll create few more to see how it comes up. Maybe it could be for the same customer. I've created some 3 orders. Let's go back to our UI and then see refresh. Yeah, so there we go. But it's much easier and simpler now, right? So it says order number, customer number, item count, total, and then the status. And then maybe we can also further extend on top of this, right? So if I want to make the status change dynamically, which is what is the next issue which I've actually created to see how we can iterate further on top of this, right? So as you can see here, yeah, it was much easier and straightforward. I would say straightforward because we gave the clear instructions. The agent was able to understand what we are trying to accomplish, and then it is able to perform these actions. Maybe let's quickly check if the statuses are getting updated properly, and then we can move on to the next part of the demo. So for that, I would like to go and update some of the order status. Maybe for order 1 itself, let's go ahead and change the status to processing. And then maybe for order 2, it's okay. Maybe if I refresh that, yeah, it's processing, right? So yeah, so that means it works. The background is everything out of the code it has written is all working fine. Now let's go ahead and look at the pull request. Let me go back here. So I can add my review here. Right, so this is all the documentation, which I think it is fine. So I'm just going to say, okay, I viewed it. And here it also added cars, which is good. And then the package log JSON, and it added cars library, which is fine. And here is my app CSS. So it added it removed the existing React logo part, which is clear. I can review all of this. I'm just going to say close, and yeah. This is a pretty simple one. So I'm trying to review it and approve it. Otherwise, if at all we need to change anything, right, we can go ahead and add a comment into this, and then it will start working on that particular comment again. Okay, this is a new CSS. So again, I think I added this in the instructions file. Let me quickly go ahead and check that. Component state management, so format renting rules. Okay. So one thing what I was thinking, maybe I didn't add it here, is typically in the CSS file, it created a separate per component, and then it did all the structuring nicely, right? Or JS file, CSS file, etc. Otherwise, sometimes you also get everything in a single file, and then you have to ensure that you add a proper instruction so that it goes into its corresponding files, which it's already taken care of, which is good. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. So I can just go ahead and complete this. And here you can see it says approved, and then it says only users who did not collaborate with corporate will satisfy review requirements. So though it says it's approved, I don't count for any review restrictions like I called out. So I'm just going to say submit the review. And yeah, so now it again waits for the approval workflow to run. Right. Okay. So it's still waiting for review. And now let the checks complete, and then I can also mark it as ready for review. So just to summarize, what it did is when we assigned a particular task or an issue to the coding agent, it started creating a plan. First thing is it started creating a draft pull request. And as part of the pull request, it started updating the changes and the things what it is doing, which is what was this pull request, right? It started an initial plan, and then it started working on certain activities. And once it is completed, it has created the PR. And you can also see this, which is the firewall warning, which you talked about, right? It is all tried to connect, but it is all blocked by the firewall rules. Right. So it completed the work, and then the PR is ready. And then now I'm trying to iterate on that particular PR. Because the simple one, I didn't do much. So I'm just saying looks good. If I want anything to be taken care by the Copilot agent, then I need to add as a comment, and then it will start taking care of it. Maybe I'll show that in another existing session in the interest of time, right? So yeah, now I think all my tests and everything is passing. So I'm just going to say merge pull request. And this is going to be on my name. So even when the pull request gets merged, it is me who is basically pulling this code from the feature branch into the main branch. Yeah. So that's how easy, and we can offload somehow, like I said, some of these mundane activities which we don't typically do, like to increase the test coverage or to write the documentation for existing code and so on and so forth using the Copilot coding agent. Yeah. I will maybe again take a pause to see if there are any new questions. Does Copilot has any optimizations in the repo indexing process? For every Copilot agent request, it has summarize the repository, build, index, etc., which might be repetitive or time consuming. Like I said, about the indexing part, I'm not fully sure yet, but the setup part is where the Copilot setups a YAML file would help. Otherwise, you are right. If you don't have that, then it needs to go and look at the repository, try to understand what are the different folder structure. And imagine if it's a big mono repo, then there could be multiple types of frameworks also could be available. That could be an Python front end, back end, or an Node.js based front end, or what, not Node.js, sorry, React.js based front end. It could be multiple, and then it will take some time to understand that. That is where if we provide those setups, then it will help us to speed up that process. Okay. Yeah, and yes, it is again to stress on the fact that it creates a code, but we need to look at the code carefully, line by line, and then we need to ensure we commit it. Because I'm in a dev environment now, I'm showing it. I'm just taking the luxury of, I didn't go through line by line clearly, and then I'm completing the PR and then merging it. But you should not be doing that in your production systems, right? That's something that's why, like I said, the onus is on us, the person who is actually assigning the task to the Copilot coding agent. Yeah. Okay, so I think that issue is closed now. It would have got closed also, right? And then now I also had brought in another issue, maybe just to see if how this is going to work. So what I did is now I'm trying to create an order tracking page, and I want to make it more real time, right? That's why I put the backend service should stream the order update to all connected clients as soon as the status changes. And then I want to create a new order status tracking UI page that displays the orders that have changes coming in from the backend. And then the tracking page should should show all the orders that have updates, and then it should look like this. So I tried to create a quick mock-up in the Figma. So don't judge me on my design skills. I'm not a designer. So I tried to put together something like this to see, okay, if I want to track an order, I want to show some sort of visual indicators, and I want to show each one order in one line, right? And I also said the order with the most recent status should be shown at the top. Now let's see if we are able to leverage Copilot again to work on this part. Right? I mean, it's the same process, right? You just go and add this, assign this issue to the Copilot, and then Copilot would start acting on it. One thing what I'm trying to demonstrate here is from this screenshot, it can also understand how the look and feel of the UI needs to be created, and then it also creates it that way. Okay, which is one of the good things which we can leverage out of this, right? And like I said, if you have MCP, I mean, this also has MCP server access, or MCP tools access. Unfortunately, I couldn't try out the MCP part yet. Like I said, it's just only been in existence for about 2 weeks in the public preview state. So if you have an MCP access already, MCP tool access for Figma or any other things, you can also provide those, configure those MCP tools so that the agent can dynamically pull things from there. Okay. Now I'm trying to understand how it's able to read the the screenshot and then build any UI. All right. So yeah, the same process it follows. It starts putting this I, and then it is working on this particular pull request, right? And then let's wait for it to come back. Let's give a few minutes, and then it should come back. Meanwhile, let me go back to the coding agent presentation, and then there are certain limitations which I would like all of us to be aware of. Again, this is like an ongoing thing, right? So whatever I'm talking about is the current state of it. Things could change in the future, right? So first thing is it can only make changes in the same repository where it's creating its pull request. I think one of you also asked this question: can it work on multiple repositories? The answer is no. If I'm working on this one repository, it can only act on this same repository where all the things are together. Okay. And then it can only access the context in the same repository as the assigned issue. So in whichever repository you have the issue, it can access only that particular context. Okay. If an issue is, let's say if you have a separate repository for issues, and then if a code is in somewhere else, then it might not be in best use case, right? You'll not be able to leverage that. And Copilot can only open one pull request at a time. In the sense, it can't work on multiple pull requests for the same issue. Like I said, it creates one pull request. It does it. It opens a session. It completes its activity, and then once it is done, it comes back and report it, and then it will look for any further improvisations in the form of comments on that particular pull request. Okay. And then it cannot work on an existing pull request that it didn't create. So for example, if you're already working on a specific functionality or a feature, and you have a pull request in open state, right? You can't ask Copilot to work on this particular pull request, right? It starts by creating its own pull request. Like I said, it starts with that Copilot / format, the new branch is created, and then the pull request is created from that branch to the default branch. So you can't plug in the Copilot agent in middle of your existing, the PR work in progress. It needs to start from the beginning. And then it always starts the changes from the repository's default branch. If you wanted to work on any specific feature branch, that's not possible at the moment. It always create a new branch, like I said, the Copilot slash fixed name from the main branch or master branch, whichever is the default branch that is set up on this repository. And it does not sign its commits. It's again the current state what I'm talking about now. It could also change in the future. That means if you have added restrictions that you need a signed commit to be available as part of your PR production policies, then you cannot directly merge the PR that Copilot created. Then you might need to bring that PR into your local machine and then update the PR with your commit so that it gets a signed commit, and then you can go ahead and merge that PR into the default branch. And then it does not work with self-hosted GitHub Action runners. That means it works only with the GitHub hosted runners, all right? So that it can bring up a new runner and then can tear it down, etc. There's no option to make it work with the self-hosted GitHub Action runners. And this doesn't account for content exclusions. In that sense, there's also a concept of content exclusion, in which if you in the repository, if you add a specific files or folders, if you say that you don't want to be part of the context which is sent to the GitHub Copilot, your agent mode or from the IDE, your interactions with that from the IDE will honor those. But in the Copilot coding agent, it doesn't honor those. Everything in that repository, because it's doing a pull of the entire repository into that runner, right? So it has access to all the repository contents. But in the other case of your ask, edit, or agent mode in the VS Code extension, there you have the control on what you want to send it as a context as part of the request. But here, everything the repository level is taken care. And like I said, again, these are something which are as we speak today, and some of these limitations could be lifted in the future. So always keep looking for the official documentation to understand what is the current limitation whenever you evaluate those. All right. And yeah, some tips and tricks, maybe from my experience of working on this so far, right? So the important thing is we need to make sure the issues are well scoped, right? If we just give one liner saying go and implement an order listing page, it can still do, but it might not be the expected way what you are thinking, right? Because it can't read your mind or read our mind, right? We need to make sure we explicitly call out our expectations, saying, yeah, I need to do A, B, C, and things in a specific format and in a specific way. Then it is much easier for it to go and start working on it. And then we need to choose the right type of task to Copilot. In the sense, if you assign in any task which is very ambiguous or very complex in terms of business logic, or it needs if there is a domain awareness is needed, such kind of tasks are not a good use case for coding agent. Right? Because it doesn't understand your business. You understand your business, right? But like I said, any kind of an unit test coverages, fixing and implementing new changes like what I showed now, and for all these kind of tasks, it definitely does a very good job. And again, because it is kind of understanding the context of our code repository, maybe at whatever the repository level, whatever it can do, it will still try to do it in terms of a complex tasks as well. But then we might need to, as part of the PR, either we go ahead and add more comments in the PR and then make it more iterative, or you get that initial set of code structure available, made it available from the coding agent, and then you start working on your own on top of that particular PR, and then start completing your complex task. So it's very important to identify the right tasks so that you get the best benefit out of it, right? Otherwise, just throwing something out and then saying that it doesn't work is not going to be beneficial for both of us. Let's say both of us, the human and the AI as well, right? And then, yeah, use the comments in the PR to iterate. And also another thing is it starts listening to the comments as and when comments are added. So the another good way to do it is to add a comment when you start as part of starting the review. So what I mean is, let's say if I go here to this repository, not to this pull request. So in the pull request, which I closed, or maybe whichever is open here already, there are two ways we can add comments to the pull request, right? One is you can directly go ahead and add a comment here. I did too many things in this, so you see this. So I can go ahead and start adding a comment saying at Copilot you do this, which is what I kind of did for rebasing this particular or resolving the conflict. So I said, Copilot, can you resolve the conflict and update the PR, right? If you do that, the moment you do that, it will start looking for this particular comment. So typically when you're doing a code review, you go into the review mode, right? In here, you can start your review and then add all your comments in a batch. Right, so here, when you say review changes, right? So here I have added this. If in case I want to add any other changes, I can go ahead and add all the changes here. It's a sample comment. Right? I can add a single comment or start a review. This is what I'm saying. If you add a single comment, then for this comment also, it can start creating a new session. So better you do a start review so that you can batch all of your comments. And then once you're done, then you can go ahead and submit your review. Then Copilot will start a new session. it will start understanding all the pull request comments, and then it will start working on all the comments at once. Otherwise, it's a waste of compute, and then it's a waste of time as well. Okay, and then add custom instructions to the repository. That will help us to get very customized code and other things, whatever we want. And again, pre-install the dependencies by leveraging the Copilot setups.yaml file so that it saves time in doing those activities. I think, so these are some of the references which I've used to learn about GitHub Copilot. All these are from the official documentation only. So this is to create issues, and then coding agent work, and then this is plans for the coding agents, right? Yeah, that's pretty much I had from a demo and presentation perspective. So if there are any questions, I'll take up, or we can go back to the demo and see how it is. Okay, I don't see any further questions here. Okay, let's go back to this. So so some of the things what I wanted to so this is first issue which I created, saying implement WebSocket-based real-time order status tracking system. And then I just did let me go to that issue first, right? To show how it should not be is where I try to have specific examples. So I just put one line saying implement a real-time order status tracking using WebSocket service and client. Like a typical developer, I kind of wrote that particular thing, right? So, but I didn't elaborate more on what should happen in the case of a service error or on the client side. How should the client page look like or anything like that, right? So it still gave some code back, and it did a good job in implementing a certain thing, right? But it is not what I envisioned or I expected. That's because there were not enough details for the agent to understand to work on to understand the expectations and then work on it accordingly, right? So what it did is it created an API and then the front end and the back end, and it did all these stuffs. Okay, but then at the end of it, I realized that okay, no, this is not what I wanted. So I had to kind of leave it in the same state where it was and didn't merge it. And then I was also trying to see if it is able to resolve the conflict, the PR. That's what I said. Can you go and resolve the conflict and update the PR? So as you can see, typically in our workflow, the main branch is the default branch. So multiple developers can keep committing changes into it. And since Copilot has created its own branch, there will definitely be cases where it can the main branch changes and the Copilot changes can get into conflicts. So it's also imperative for us to do that. There are two ways to do it. Either you do it by yourself and then push a commit to it, or you can also ask the Copilot to go and resolve the conflict. If it's a simpler one, I would recommend us doing it, again, saving time and then energy. Otherwise, if it's a lot of number of files are there, then you can try and leverage the Copilot coding agent for that. And one other thing which I wanted to showcase is display. Okay, handling. So these are the PRs which I created using Copilot, and then I've merged it already. Yeah, I think this is what is a work in progress now, right? Yeah, so as you can see, these are the dynamic updates keep happening. It has completed all of these activities. Now it's trying to do the testing of the real-time streaming functionality. And once it is done, we should be maybe able to look at the code and then see what are the changes it has done. Okay, see, it can understand that. Thank you for the image. I can see order tracking UI that needs to be implemented. It shows a timeline view with order status progression, pending to processing to ship to deliver with timestamps for each status change. Right? It is able to understand what we wanted it to do first, and then it looks at the repositories. The same thing. It understands the service side, understands the client side, understands all the components, and it can also error out, right? Like any developer, it can also make mistakes and error out. So for sure, please keep an eye on where it stopped and where it errored out, and then we need to take forward the further actions from there, right? Yeah. So this is the understanding, and this is the backend changes that are needed. Socket connection to receive real-time updates, to navigation to order list and order tracking. See, it does identify there's an order list page, so it's trying to do this. And then appearance in the image are these: track order, header, order number, display, timeline with circles, right, and timestamps for each status. So I put as an example. Let's see if it's able to even match this particular format of this particular date time. So this is the implementation plan. All right, progress update. Yeah, I think this is the calculation spot, what it is trying to do. Yeah. So backend work is done. It needs to create the auto tracking component for the front end. So we can now go ahead and see this is a backend test. And as you can see, I think it didn't add any new tests. It just ran the 19 tests and it got passed. Maybe when the code, when the PR is updated, we can go ahead and add a comment saying, go ahead and add more tests. See, another thing to notice, we can't interrupt the session and then provide comments in the middle. We need to wait for the session to complete. Okay, I think there is some issue and then it failed in the end, I believe. Okay, that I was not expecting that, but yeah, it's prone to happen. So it stopped working due to an error, which we will figure it out. So if you go to detail logs, it's again a Copilot, sorry, not Copilot, GitHub action. So you can open the GitHub actions and then we can process, look at the request and the errors here. Yeah, I think it failed to get the response from an AI model. It retreated for 5 times and then it got stopped. Okay, maybe it could be rate limiting or traffic issues as well. I mean, not rate limiting, but it could be a traffic issues as well. But anyways, yeah, this is our typical actions code. If you want to even understand further on the individual steps that runs in the GitHub Actions, you can go and explore this. This is the setup job, right? And then it pulled all these things, and then this is the preparing the Copilot. And then it starts checking out code, setting up node dependencies, installing the dependencies for outer web app. See, these are the steps which I've added into that the Copilot setup steps YAML file, right? Which is what it is used to run to the setup. Okay. So yeah, one good thing, again, it depends on where the error error has happened or where it got stuck. Assuming if, let me go back to pull request. So now it has tried completing all of these aspects here already, right? And then it's trying to do a testing of real-time streaming, and then it ensures what is more essential appear on the top and update AP documents is what is pending, now, right? So what we could do now, again, is to go and pull this particular branch into the local, and then we can quickly run through and see where it's stuck. And then if there is anything which we can do by ourselves and add more code to it, we can add more code to it, and then we can update the same pull request. And then further changes, if we want the model to complete or continue from there, we can also add as a comment to it. That's how we can iterate. We can switch between agent starting and then human updating certain things and then giving back to the agent. And then this transition can continuously happen in the same PR itself. Okay. And any other questions? We just have 3 more minutes. Okay. I don't see much. So let me go ahead and quickly pull this code as well. Again, curious to see where it landed. Okay, let me stop these things. Okay, check out main. Okay, and then check out extend. Okay. Auto service. npm install. npm start. Okay, the server is up and running now. Let's go back to the web app as well and see if this works. Okay, that's good. Now it says auto tracking, WebSocket connection error. Okay, good. Now we can go ahead and start figuring out what happened basically, right? Yeah, but at least we have the base code and everything ready on our side. Now we can go ahead and start exploring this code. I can now go and look at what is my order, web app, what is the new code that got added, and then I can start iterating further from here. All right. All right, I think I'm also running out of time. We just have only 1 more minute. Yes, if there are any final questions I can take up. Otherwise, yeah, thank you so much. I hope you learned something new in this session. Thank you, Parth. Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you everyone for taking time on your weekday and then making time for this session to learn something new. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Swami. Thank you so much for doing this. And yes, I think you have already answered all the questions, which are all very relevant. And the session was really very exciting. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And yes, Swami, thank you once again. And
Mhm.
folks, we have this series of event. So please, if you haven't registered for the part two, please go ahead and register for the part two, and we'll see you soon
Yeah.
there again. Yep. So
Yeah.
with that,
All right.
we're calling for a wrap. Thank you everyone. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Have a good rest of the day, guys. Thank you. Bye.